Hi everybody, it's me, Bill, and today I'm at the Kutztown Antique Radio Show in Kutztown. Come check out what I found. The Kutztown Antiques Radio Meet is dedicated to the collection and preservation of antique radios, televisions, electronic test equipment, and related items. The show is held twice a year in May and September and has grown into the premier radio event in the East, attracting collectors and dealers from across the United States, including my friend Buford here.
I'm Buford Chittister, and I'm author of the classic cone radio books, and I specialize in 1925 cone speakers and horn speakers. And why they call them a horn speaker? Because they look like a horn, and they had all kinds of them, all kinds of designs and so forth. In late 1923, they come up with the first cone speaker. Why they call it a cone speaker? Because they have cones, different types of cones. Late 1924, Pathé, which manufactured high-end phonographs, come up with the first speaker. They used part of their phonograph and they took it and they added a cone on it and made it a speaker. Now this is an RCA. I'm sure everybody's heard of RCA. This is a folded cone speaker. It happened to have two cones. It's an RCA Lumineer speaker. A 36-inch Western Electric cone. This is a reproduction.
Okay.
And I buy the paper, and it's all recycled paper, and it's a light gray when I get it. To make a cone, I cut a big notch out in here, the size I need, so whenever I pull it together and seam it, it becomes a cone. I draw all this on by hand, exactly like the original, same size, everything. It's 36 inches in diameter, and I draw all the detailing on, and I overlap it by 3/8 of an inch, and I use a hot device that melts that glue, and then I seal the edge. And that's the way the original was. So our Adventure ship speaker, and it's lighted. It has lights inside it, so you plug it in and it lights up the whole back of the ship. And it has a single cone on the back. It has the name Tower Adventure there.
I really want to thank you for showing me all this stuff. This is really cool, and it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
You're going to get hooked on this stuff. If you get a couple of them, you're going to love them.
Probably. Have you ever lost a knob on a radio or a television and you don't know where to find it? Come to Kutztown, try gobs of knobs. They've got knobs that'll fit every radio or television in the world. If Gobs of Knobs doesn't have it, somebody else might. Come on out and check it out. Look at these. So, Walt, you were just telling me about this radio.
It's actually a tuner. It's very unique. It's the brand is Calbest, made in California. California's best.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. It's late 50s, early 60s. And what's special about it is it will receive AM and FM stereo, which is what they did. One channel was AM, the other one was FM. So you needed a double tuner or two sets to receive that stereo.
Okay.
Then they invented multiplex, FM stereo. This will do both. And you rarely see a set that will do that. This is the only one I've ever seen that does that.
What year was this from?
This is going to be 58 to 60 in there somewhere. I don't know the exact date.
Okay. But late 50s, early 60s?
Yeah, it had to be.
And you're selling this today?
Yes, hopefully.
What's the price on that?
$225.
$225.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful looking rig.
And you cannot find this on YouTube or eBay. This is rare, so you don't find it on eBay or YouTube.
Awesome. All right, thanks for telling me about it, Walt. Really appreciate it. The Kutztown Antiques Radio Meet, presented by Renninger's Promotions and hosted by the Delaware Valley Historic Radio Club. It's held under two pavilions, 60 by 300 feet, and it is an outdoor show. There are hundreds of tables with antique radios, parts, and related merchandise. Free admission and parking Friday and Saturday.
This is an early 20s radio. They're not very attractive. And at a certain point, radio producers and salespeople realized that women didn't want them in the home. So in the late 20s, they started to get beautiful with more ornate cabinets.
Okay.
The speakers started to get very attractive and very beautiful. In those days, everybody was making a radio. So you could buy a radio, you could cobble one together, you could buy a kit. And this was a kit. And so sometimes they didn't come with cabinets. And, if you're on a fixed budget, who cares? Because you got wires all over and batteries and antennae. You don't need a box. You had to buy the vacuum tubes that come out. And these are actually, they're almost 100 years old, but they're very common. These go for about $12, which is probably CPI adjusted cheaper than they were then. You can get this operational with a little bit of work.
Is anyone still making tubes?
Vacuum tubes are still readily available today. There's so many of them.
I've seen a lot of tables with them.
I had probably 1,000 of them today, and I sold them all to a guy for $75 just to get rid of them. So there's nothing like taking something that's really ancient, and all of a sudden there's a day when you realize it works. My ART-13 transmitter from World War II that was top of the line war tech that the Germans didn't have it, Japanese didn't have it. And to get it operational took me a year and a half, building power supplies and talking to experts. And then when it finally operated, it was just like, I'm talking on it now. I'm a ham radio operator, so I have an FCC license and I get on and I operate.
What's your call sign?
Kilo Delta 2, Alpha Zulu India.
Wow, okay.
I like to collect period equipment from the late 20s and 30s, World War II military equipment. I get that stuff operating and operate that on the air too. And it's interesting, when you're on the air, people don't know what you're using because they can only hear you talk. So,
is the sound quality any different, do you think?
It's the same. Love it.
Yeah. Really appreciate you talking to me.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Okay, so Dave, you were just telling me about the television and the VCR. You want to tell me about it again?
Yes, this is a 1967 RCA color TV. And by 1967, most of the picture tubes were rectangular. This one,
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
And the round tubes were originally installed in color TVs in 1954. RCA was the first. And by the time you got to this set, a good almost 15 years later, these sets were down to probably a little over $300 for this. But if you wanted a nice rectangular TV, you were going to pay more like $600, $500, $600. And this one, it says New Vista Color. Now, New Vista was a name that came out in 61 or 62 when they developed a tube that made the tuner pull in better. So they kept New Vista for years after that, and I think it finally went away. This might have been the last year for it. But this is also the last year that RCA, because they went to the more familiar RCA logo in 1969 models. So if you see anything like that, it's 69 and later. And when you see Nipper and the RCA symbol there, that is pre-1969.
Was the tube actually rounded?
It was. You just don't see that the whole picture tube is round, and the manufacturing process was very standardized for that by then.
If I wanted to take this TV home today, how much would it set me back?
Now, if this was a square picture tube, maybe 100. If it's a round picture tube, it might double the price, only because they're more sought after because they're the old original color sets, and they do make beautiful pictures. Some of us didn't give up, probably because we're crazy.
I see that a lot here.
Yeah.
Dave, I really appreciate you talking to me.
No problem.
Thanks again. Ray, you were just telling me about the 45s. You were telling me about
I was telling
RCA.
you about the 45 players that were released in 1948. They were in competition with the 33 and the third long play record introduced by CBS. They called down David Sarnoff to introduce the long play record, and he had no idea what he was looking at. That he saw it, he knew he was in trouble. He notified his engineers, "What do you got on the shelf?" And they said, "Well, we got this 45 player." He says, "Break it out. We gotta get it out of here." So they broke it out. They released it in 1948 in competition with the 33 and the third. It was kind of even at the time. The 45s really were a little behind the 33 and the third. RCA started putting the long play record on their players. around 1951. But RCA continued to make only the 45 player. They still felt there was a market for it, and it was when rock and roll came out around 1956. That's when it really took off. And some of the players here, this is a 45 player. This is like from 1954. This is an EY3. I'm going to say 1953 on this one. This was their top of the line. This was the orthophonic, right? This was, I would say, released in 1956, 57. Orthophonic, RCA. That was their top of the line. That was their best-selling player that they came out with. It really took off, and then other companies started to license the record changer from RCA. They actually bought the actual changer from RCA and just put their own tag on it and put it into their own players. You can stack about 14 records on there. Yeah.
And that would just play you all night?
That'll play, yeah, that'll play for a while.
Yeah?
That'll play for a while. That continued until about 1958. That was the end of the 45 line. They started to discontinue them. People wanted multi-speed. Why buy one speed when you can have multi-speeds?
Amazing.
And then there was a couple of stereo only 45s introduced. That was around 1959. The whole 45 line was discontinued, and then stereo came out in 59, and then that was it from there. Then just record players just started taking off like 3-speed.
Multi-speeds, yeah.
Yeah, multi-speeds. Yeah, that's the story of 45s, really, basically.
Well, that's great.
But I restore them. You know, I love to restore them.
So when you're done with it, it's
I'm done.
as good as brand new.
Right. Chris Cuff was my mentor. He taught me everything I know about 45 players. He passed on early this year.
Yeah,
He taught me everything I know about 45 players. I actually have a site on Facebook. It's called 45 RPM Record Player Repair. If anybody wants to learn how to fix a 45 player, just join the group. Got over 1,000 guys on there willing to help you to restore your own 45 player. And don't think there aren't any more out there. There's a lot still out there ready to be fixed.
Awesome. Ray, I really appreciate you talking to me.
I'm happy to be here.
This is great.
All right, bye.
Antique radios are more than just old electronics. They're a part of American history, something we should preserve and cherish. Many of these radios are too far gone to be reconditioned, and sadly they end up in the fire pit.
It'll never work, McGee.
What do you mean it'll never work? My gosh, Molly.
Let me get this straight again.
Yeah?
You claim that you can fix this radio set so it'll tune in programs that were broadcast 20 years ago?
25 years ago, even. I'm rewiring it so I can tune it to different years instead of different stations, see?
No, I don't.
Well, look, Tootsie, according to the McGee theory of radio Dianetics, which I'm the guy that thought it up, I claim that when you hear a broadcast once, that ain't necessarily the end of it, see? It don't just disappear. In other words, old radio programs never die. I mean, they're still out there, bouncing around in the air, waiting for somebody to tune them in again. And I'm the guy that can do it. You change your mind when I get this baby working, Molly.